Welcome to Imperfect with Rebekah and Zandra. Today we have a very serious topic to talk about, and Rebekah thought about waiting to do that, and I said, no, we already talked about kids. I think it's a good flow to talk about this because it's about kids possibly being kidnapped and maybe even trafficked at this point. We don't know. We don't know a lot. In our hometown on April 21st and then also on April 23rd. So the 21st at around 10 a.m., there was an 11-year-old male juvenile asked by a pickup driver to get into their car by luring them with a game card, apparently. And that was like, it looks like it was like downtownish, downtown Portland. If I'm reading the where it out without. Yeah, downtown, or sorry, yes, downtown Ontario, which is crazy. And that was an 11-year-old, and the 11-year-old was smart, said no, quickly tried to get away. And then it happened again in a different vehicle. So that first one was a pickup. Looks like it was, I want to give the specifics because if you are in the area and you weren't aware, now you are, and maybe you're looking around. It says they're looking for an Idaho plated old style 2-door small pickup, dark blue in color with scratched up paint and rusted lower body. And then the next day, it was at Alameda School soccer fields. Everyone knows where that is in the area. Still a male luring these kids into what looks like a smaller bluish green truck. So it sounds similar now that I'm reading it out loud to myself. With a camper.
Yeah.
With a camper, but possible organ plates, the blue style, like it looks like old school plates. This is probably the new version though. This time they were wearing a hat and tried to tempt them by just honking at the kids, which, yay, honk.
Well, they actually ended up chasing down these kids this time.
Oh, and they chased them down? That's terrible.
Yeah. And they actually didn't know how far they had ran because they were just so scared that they just kept running.
Just running. Okay. Yeah. So if you are in the area and you've seen this pickup or something similar, or unfortunately any events similar to this, the Portland Police phone number
Ontario
is 541-473. Why am I saying Portland? I mean, I know I'm saying Portland. I'm looking right at the information. Ontario, Oregon. That's Eastern Oregon near Idaho. The river's right there. It's literally the border. 541-473-5125. Ontario, Oregon Police. I guess I'm just like, my brain just doesn't believe it because it's such a small town. Everyone knows everyone, or at least they used to when we were growing up. Yeah. That I just can't imagine it being there. So my brain's like Portland, but It's Ontario, Oregon. So that's what we're talking about. Thank you, Rebekah, for catching my mistakes. I wanted to ask her tips about talking about hard discussions with your kids because she's already had to do it. She's got a 14-year-old and almost 13-year-old. How old are the other ones? 8 and
11 and 8.
I was gonna say I'm missing the number 3.
So it's something that hasn't been a new conversation for us. The moment that they could sit down and really listen to what we were saying and understand what we were saying. We actually started having these conversations with them really, really young. So I want to say probably even 2-3 years old, just going to the store, right? You stay by mom's side. You don't talk to a stranger. If you see that I'm talking to somebody and I always explain, I'm a friendly person. I talk to everybody. I'm nice to everybody, but that doesn't mean that they're not a stranger. So I had to make that very clear to them early on because of my personality and the way that I could come off as I just smiled at that person and I said hi. I don't want that to be something that they thought, oh, mom knows that person and that makes them not a stranger. And so we started having those conversations really early on. The house that we had previously over in Ontario, we would let them play out front. Most of the time, because they were so young back then, we didn't allow them to play out by themselves until our oldest was probably like in first grade, and he wasn't allowed to leave like the front yard. So then we just had like boundaries where they were allowed to go without us, to learn that independence, because I wanted to also instill in them confidence and that independence, and learn that common sense of, we are okay without mom and dad, but there is a limit, and there has to be that know-how of knowing right from wrong. And so we would sit down and not only talk about it, but then we would go over scenarios. So what if somebody, let's say you're outside waiting for school pickup, and somebody came up and said, hey, no, I'm supposed to take them. Your mom is hurt and you need to come with us. What would you do? And we would wait for their reply. And especially when they were much younger, they would say, well, we might ask a question like, what happened or something, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing. Something happened to me and I sent somebody to come pick you up. Who do you think? I'd answer it with an answer. Like, who do you think we would send to come pick you up if there was something wrong? And it would always be like, oh, they'd give us an answer of somebody that they actually know, family, really close friends, And I said, exactly. So I'm not going to send somebody you don't know
Never met
to come and get you if something were to have happened to us. And so we would go over those scenarios. And so it's something that we've always talked about really early on. And there's definitely been time periods where we kind of slack on it a little bit. But unfortunately last year when we had little Michael Vaughn go missing, he still has not been found. It was the first, I think, real incident in the area that I can at least remember where we actually had a child go missing. And our kids are old enough that they really grasp that. Even our youngest, he was only 7 at the time, and knew how scary that was, knew how important it was. And so I actually even had the 2 younger ones go with me to help with the search, and go door to door, knocking on the doors. And so they were able to at least understand that and grasp it. And it was like, okay, this is why we've always had those conversations with you. And it's hard now with this going on because this particular truck, there's pictures of this truck just down the road from one of our friends. She has cameras all around her house. So it was actually on the side of her house, like one of the main entrances coming in. And that was what she turned into the police. That's one of the main pictures that's actually going around on social media right now in our area. Like, look for this car. And I'm like, that's my subdivision. So I actually I think it was like Tuesday morning, I actually drove the kids to school, which I don't do very often, like unless it's a special occasion or they have a lot of stuff they have to take for a project. And it was raining, so I kind of used that as an excuse. And then after I dropped them off, I was like, I don't want to instill fear in them. I don't want to be scared myself. Like, I want us to just be hyper vigilant. I want them to learn to be aware of their surroundings. And so we have those conversations like almost daily now that it's happening, because right before those 2 incidences as well, so it had to have been maybe 2 weeks ago, there was a lady in our local Walmart who was catching on that there was a particular man who was following her around in the store. And the more that she paid attention, there was actually multiple men that were then starting to kind of surround her. And then she stopped and talked to another gal who, because she was like, okay, I need to like make it very apparent that I know you're watching me, you're following me. And the gal was like, oh my gosh, they've been following me too. And so they then went and grabbed some employees at Walmart and were able to kind of get them involved in that and alerted, and they weren't able to find them. So that was just like, I mean, it's all been within like probably a month that all of this is going on.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hinder their childhood. I want them to still be able to play outside. It might mean that we're watching a lot more closely because I have just barely learned to let go a little bit and allow them to play in the neighborhood without me. Like, okay, you just have to check in. Or I let them,
Right.
Walk or ride their bike down. It's not that far, but it's further than I've ever let them to, like this little mom pop, like little shop where they can go and get
sure.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And not a gas station, but it's kind of like a gas station. I'm getting like anxiety just thinking, like talking about it, but I don't want to live in that constant fear, and I don't want to put that on my kids either. I want to just educate them, but that is kind of my approach to it with a lot of tough topics. I mean, we talk about everything, like, and I want them more than anything, when they have a certain situation arise, I want them to know that they can come to us. They can talk to us about anything. So that's why I openly talk to them about it. They know what sex trafficking is. They know like what could possibly happen if they were taken. We even went over different situations of, okay, what if you said no and you did all the right things, but they still tried to take you, then what would you do? Like, we go over all of the horrible things and try to bring it into a light of like education versus I'm going to scare you to death so that you, so you make a good choice. And that's kind of how my personal approach to it is, because I've always wanted to be the parent that had open communication with my kids. I didn't want them hearing this from other kids and then getting scared. So that's why I approach it that way. And even when they're really little and we'd go over the situations, what would happen if you were taken, they would come up with crazy scenarios. So I'd scream and punch and bite and kick them in the balls. Or like,
those are all good things though.
Yeah. Like, okay, like you guys get it. You understand it. You know what you're supposed to do. If somebody doesn't quite fit into this area, like you haven't seen them before, you don't know them. Like if they start to even make eye contact or you feel funny at all, you have every right to just turn around. It's not rude. It is not rude to just not talk to that person, not address them. You go home. If you don't feel comfortable, that is your right to leave. And so I've made that extremely clear. But our parents kind of did the same thing. Like they told us what to watch for. Back when we were younger, it was white vans, like you looked for the white vans. You didn't talk to strangers. You didn't take anything. You didn't what if they're looking for a lost dog or they're offering you candy or something that you might like? You always said no. You didn't talk to them. You can be polite, or you just don't say anything at all and you walk away. And so a lot of that came from like what my parents always talked to us about. So I don't know. But again, that's just my personal take on it. I am a very anxious kind of person, and so I try really hard not to put that on my kids because I don't want them to have to deal with that. And I'm the type that I'm like, I don't like negative feelings, so we're going to push them all away and we're just going to be happy and, be in our little bubble and we're going to move on. Like it's not real life. And so I'm aware of that. So I try really hard to not put that on to my kids as well. So that is, that's my whole spiel on how I handle it with my kids. And, and I've lived and learned with what's going to work best for them as well. and what's going to scare them into being fearful, and I don't want to do that. And so we've had conversations that have made them more fearful, and so we know how to approach it a little bit better, and each kid is different too. So there's, like my oldest, he's 14, so I showed him the truck. Like, this is the truck that they're looking for. If you guys are out at the bus stop and you don't feel right, then you take your brothers and you bring them back home. And I had the whole conversation, like, if QP says, this is not right, like, I have a weird feeling, we're going home, you are then to listen to him, because he is the oldest and he is more aware of his surroundings just in general, because he's just that type of that's his personality. Yeah. You're going to listen to him. You're going to go back home or leave, or, I have gone out to where I can see Dexter getting off the bus instead of because he gets dropped off further than anyway. So I have taken more steps of precaution, but I try not to cross that line of not allowing them to live their lives and being kids. So it's a hard one, but I don't know. So how do you think that you would end up talking to your kids? Like,
you saying that you started at like 2 or 3, just like with the store, that makes a lot of sense. I never really thought about it, but that would start them to, start to be more aware. Even though I've noticed, and I've always known this, but with my own child, little kids are really aware. They're just they don't know how to vocalize what they're saying. So helping her with the language will definitely be one thing that I'm sure I'll do, because I want her to be able to communicate, because I feel like as a brown kid, we don't necessarily communicate about important things. Not because we don't think it's important. No one was ever taught how to do that. Like, there's so much pride in a lot of Latin cultures that they don't want to look vulnerable. Like, I'm similar in that I try not to be down. Like, I want to be positive all the time, but most of it is because almost any other emotion was bad or weak, or, something along those lines. And so I would start with being able to acknowledge how you feel, for her. And then hopefully expand on what is safe or wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but some things are wrong. Like, if there's someone that doesn't feel like following your gut or your vibe. Like, I used to always get vibes from other people, and they always ended up being someone that, like, I don't know, like, they seemed good to other people, and they were really good friends with some of my friends, and I was like, I don't know. And I would try to spend time with that person. I'm like, I just don't feel it. I was like, I don't want to be around them. And it finally took me in my mid-20s to be like, oh, that's my intuition telling me this person just doesn't go, like, you guys are not compatible. Like, you shouldn't even try, like, because every time I did, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think this was going to work out. Like, I don't know why I'm even trying to be their friend for this friend or whatever. So yeah, having her follow her instincts. I guess this is sort of along the lines, since I do have a girl, I would like her to have a way to protect herself. And my mom, when I was younger, wanted to put me in judo. I think I was like 5, but I was already not girly, and I didn't want to do it. That was the one thing, like, she made me do in a way made, because at 5, you don't want to try every sport. That's your parent. And then you probably like one, because I tried pretty much every sport when I was 5. So she wanted me to do judo. So I had a sort of a type of way to protect myself. And I was like, no, I'm not going. I'm already not girly. I'm already not girly. That makes me even less girly. So I want to do that. I want to do some sort of family. I think you guys do it, like jiu-jitsu, karate. I don't care what it is. Something that'll help her learn the skills to defend herself if she needs to and be able to get away. And it'll build so much confidence. I already know that. Like, just as a girl one of the few girls who took strength training in high school, I loved it. I love being able to lift heavy weights and squat, and like some of the guys were like, whoa. Like, I loved it. It was one of my favorite things. So having the confidence in herself and of like her physical body, but also like understanding why she's getting those feelings of like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like, so she can just be like, okay, yeah, walk away, like you said. So yeah, confidence. I would like to talk more, because I do want to be a parent that hopefully she'll come and talk to me, or her dad. I don't care who it is, as long as she's talking to us. we were talking the other day, actually. He's like, I want to be the house that the friends come over. I was like, yeah, me too, because then I know where they are.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And I go back, I was thinking as you're talking about that too, last week you were mentioning about, you know, teaching them consent. And so I feel like that also kind of goes hand in hand of teaching them that consent. And once they start to understand that better, they can have a better idea of like, no, I don't have to talk to you. I have every right. I have control of my body, and nobody else can take that. And then what you said too about, you know, having, you know, our brown skin too, you know, the MMIWs, like, missing and murdered Indigenous women. We have a higher rate of, the highest rate of going missing and being murdered. And it's extremely scary. And the sexual assaults are also of higher rates for us as well. So,
and that's been going on since conquistadors.
Yeah.
Forever, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't know. I guess that's why I was telling Zandra before we started, I'm like, she goes, it's a really serious topic. I said, I know, but I still try to bring like a bright light to it of some sort of just, we try to lighten it up with our kids by going through the scenarios. And also I kind of feel like the scenarios too, it reminds me of just like real life, you know, when you have an example, or a specific scenario to kind of play through, it makes it easier. Like, okay, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to, you know, you kind of go through, okay, I'm going to go to this section first, then I'm going to go here, blah, blah, blah. Same kind of idea.
Right.
Like, okay, so if this happens, what would you do? And that's how I kind of approach it with, alcohol, sex, you know, if all of the things. And so, it's just how, I don't know, it's probably just my no filter personality that I have. And it makes it easier for me. And so, so yeah, it's scary, and it's not something that we necessarily want to have to deal with as parents, but it's also not new. And I know that it seems like it's a lot right now, but we were just watching the Gacy files or Gacy tapes, or I can't remember what the show was called. That was like way before we were even born, right? So it's not new. I just feel like it's that elephant in the room that we are finally talking about. We're finally being more aware of it. You know, back before it's kind of our society as a whole when it comes to a lot of things that we just didn't talk about a lot of tough situations and tough topics. But I feel like with our generation specifically, we kind of push that a little bit more. We bring up harder topics, and we are more outgoing to communicate things with others in the community and our kids. And so even though it seems like it's all brand new right now and there's a lot of it going on, it's always been going on. It's always been there. It's something our parents talk, at least for me, my parents always talk to us about, like, what would you do? This is a real threat. You just need to be aware of it, and you need to be safe, and you need to make good choices. And ultimately, it's what other people do is out of our control. But what we can control is how we're going to handle ourselves in certain situations. So do I want to, send my kids out extra 5 minutes early to go to the school bus, or I'm going to have them go right when it's time to go, right? Like, sure. Those are the things that we have control over. Do I want to hover over my kids and sit there at the bus stop with them now after they've been doing it for years by themselves? I don't know. It's a day-to-day kind of decision that I'm going to make, but I want to instill confidence in them that they do know what to do and what choices they have, and that they do have control of how they handle things. Yeah. So that, like you said, with the jiu-jitsu, that's one of the biggest, and wrestling, I want them to be able to have the confidence and the know-how of how to protect themselves.
It's funny that you were talking about, it's not funny. Bus stops. I have actually been thinking about it since, I think it was last episode. I was telling you that my husband was like, they were at the bus stop saying bye for the first day of school, or whatever day of school it was. And I've been thinking, do I just want to take her to school, or is she going to ride the bus? Are we going to walk? We're actually in walking distance to what will be her elementary school. But their school start at 8, or at least currently at 8 o'clock. I don't know what time your guys' school starts. I'm like, but why does it start at 8 when the high school and middle school start at 8:30? They get out at 2:30 when the middle school and high school get out at 2:30. And I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
So anyway, I've been thinking about that because I'm like, I kind of want to take her, because I always kind of wanted my mom to take me, because there were always a few students that I looked at and I was like, oh, their mom gets to drop them off, when I was in mainly kindergarten and first grade. So I think part of me wants to do that because it's what I wanted, and part of me is like, that's just my helicopter mom wanting to be sure I know that she went to school. So these are things that I have been thinking about, but I'm like, it's 5 years away, 4 years away.
Yeah. I used to take them all the time. It was, I think the last couple of years they started riding the bus, but it was mainly because I was working when I was 3 years maybe. But it was also like my time with them where they were in the car and we could have conversations about certain things too. And so it was like you're all in here. I got you all. Yeah. And now we're gonna have a conversation. And then I would always, I always have sayings. Like, if you guys haven't caught on yet, I have all my little mottos that I say. So every single time they leave the house, they walk out the door, they're getting out of the car or whatever, I'm like, make good choices, have fun, make good choices. It's always make good choices. Probably has a lot to do with my childhood. But whenever we have issues with school stuff, it's their choices, whether they didn't make a choice or they made a bad choice, right? Like, you didn't leave in that situation or whatever. So it's always like a learning experience, right? So I used to use that time to talk to them and kind of morning motivation, inspiration, like, this is how we're going to have a great day, and, all those things. But, it also, once you experience the drop off and pickup line, you might decide that
change my mind.
Want to do.
Well, that's why I was like, we could walk to school, because I've seen the drop off and pickup line, and it looks like a mess with no cars there. Yeah. Yeah. So, I just wanted to bring that up because it is something that we can control for us and our kids for a time, but it is also something that I probably will have to learn to let go of. Cause I know for me, it is a control thing where you want to, I should say but I know you would too, want to control everything and you can't. But you can control how you're feeling about that, which is why I wanted to bring it up too. I was telling Rebekah right as we were recording yesterday, I posted on our Instagram as well, and it goes to Facebook. I had gotten some anxiety around 1:00 and I wasn't really sure what it was about. And then as we started recording, I was like, oh, I'm getting kind of anxious. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what it was. Cause was it yesterday or the day before? We had just recently decided to do the topic either way. And so I think that was part of it. And then the teenagers, they were not making good choices in the counseling center and it didn't help. So I went and hid the last 15 minutes in our filing room and did some filing. That was my choice. I needed more quiet because they were not quiet. So I went in the filing room, tried to take some deep breaths, filed some paperwork. It helped. But running, since I've started running, which actually is probably since I moved here, I realized it is one thing that helps my mental health. And it's not just running, it's any physical activity. I need a workout. Yeah. And I haven't been taking care of that part of me enough, that I went for a run yesterday because I knew it was going to help that anxiety. Because it was a little bout. It was crazy. And then once I took that run, I was like, okay, I feel a lot better. So then today I was like, I got to take the run. Like I'm not actually hurting. I know I've done a marathon. Like I know it actually hurting from your body is being like, just stop. So take care of yourself and the things that you can control.
Yes. Yes.
And your kids, of course, like the things you can control for them, food, water, home, hopefully those, the things you need.
Yes, I agree. And I love the saying, you always need, when you're in an airplane, it's like going down and they have the oxygen masks that come down. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can take care of anybody else, because if you aren't getting what you need, you aren't available to help anybody. And so it's extremely important that as parents or anybody who is caregiving for anybody else, that you are paying attention to yourself and your feelings and your needs, because we do. I remember my sister telling me, she was like, I don't remember how many years ago it was, and I was just having so much anxiety, and she was like, I hate to tell you, but the reason your kids are having such a hard time too is because they're feeding off of you. And so it took a lot for me to say, I felt so selfish taking care of myself and addressing those things, but it's taken a long time for me to realize that, and to say, I don't want my issues and my negative feelings to then be poured out onto my children. And so that's why when I have these kind of conversations, it's really, it's always in the back of my head, like I might be scared to death, and I might have anxiety, like frizzing out of my hair. But I want them to understand the severity of it. Like I want them to know that it is a serious issue, but I don't want to push all of my fears and anxieties onto them and make it into issues that they're going to have later on growing up, and then have that passed on, and so on and so forth. So I make an extremely conscious effort to not do that. And a lot of that has come from Nathan, like really addressing that with me and expressing like, okay, you gotta let them be. You gotta let them be kids. You gotta let them go play. They're only scared now because you're scared, and da 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 da. Like so fortunately we've got Nathan, who is like super grounded and, level-headed, that we are like, he's always the one bringing me back down and like, deep breath, you're okay.
Yeah. There is Ryan as well.
Yes.
He he's not really a risk taker though. So he's definitely, it's weird. He's definitely more like, let her run around. Like she's going to fall. She's going to, and I think the reason, I think it's just hardwired in us once we've popped out a baby, popped out, that you're just like, no, I did all this work. Be careful.
Yes.
So it's hard to let it go a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah, he's definitely helpful with that too. So hopefully, yeah, I honestly, I think when it comes time to talk to things, while I will probably be doing the talking, she'll probably be doing the talking to him. I just have a feeling that she's going to go to him, which is fine. Like I said, as long as she's talking to one of us, I don't really care.
Yeah. And we used to do a lot more of like family meeting style and like have everybody sit down. And if it's something, that like really affects us, or if it's like something we need to talk to them and make it very known that either, you know, it's a family issue, we don't talk about it anywhere else, or, you know, it could be a gazillion different things. We'll do it that way where it's like all of us talking together. But definitely as they've gotten older, you know, like when I had this conversation with him the other morning, like Nathan had already gone to work. I just brought him in, set him at the table, and Dexter's like, "Oh, are we having a family meeting?" Like, no, I just need to talk to you guys about, you know, and they were already pretty much aware of it. But it was just because we had already had these conversations time and time again, it was just a, hey, remember how we always talked about this? I just need you to be aware. This is what's going on, you know, and so it makes it easier to have those conversations later on if you've already had them since they could really maybe not even talk, right? Like,
yeah.
So I am no expert. I'm just going to put out a disclaimer. Like, this is just how I do things, and I have failed numerous times as a mother. I am far from perfect, but this is just kind of what works for our family. And if you are maybe wondering like how you wanted to approach it with your own kids, then maybe you can take bits and pieces of this, and maybe it's helpful, and maybe it's helpful to be like, I'm never going to do that. So, you know, you got to do what's right for you and your family. And sometimes it comes down to these kind of tough situations before you even think about how you wanted to handle it or what you would do. But that's my whole spiel on that. But
well, I thank you for the tips of starting basically now. We don't really go to the store, but like I said, I think that's a great way to start. Like, make her aware. She totally understands, and I'm like, no, stay here. Let me have your hand. Like, so she gets it. So yeah, why not start young? Like, like that's the situation that everyone does every day. Like when I was like 4 or something, got lost in our tiny little mall back then, and I was like, oh, like I wasn't paying enough attention that I went out and went back in. I think it was Emporium. I don't remember though for sure. And I was lost, and then my mom, maybe it was in Nampa. I don't know. Sorry, I was just thinking about it. But yeah, so it is a good place to start. And I kept rambling, but I wanted to say thank you for the tips and thank you for listening with us.
Yes.
Rebekah, tell us where we can find us.
Oh, yes. So if you are not already, we are on Instagram. You can come follow us, hang out with us. We are most active on Instagram, but we are also on Facebook, Twitter, and then you can listen to us at Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube. So pretty much anywhere that you are listening to regular podcasts, you can listen to us there. And we just thank you for hanging out with us. I think this one went a little bit longer than we intended, but it was really important to kind of address this and, you know, kind of get it off our chest. I think talking about things also helps to just alleviate that anxiety and stress too. And knowing that you're not alone. And Yeah, so we're always here. So if you guys have any questions or comments, or if you want to, if there's anything that you want us to, like, you want to hear our opinion, not that it really matters, but if you wanted to, then, send us a message, let us know, leave us a review. We'd love to get your feedback. And we just appreciate that you guys are hanging out here with us. And we just hope that you guys have a perfectly imperfect day.
Yes. Have a great day. And of course, perfectly imperfect.
Bye, guys.
Bye.